It's been interesting because it isn't like anything else. We're not bringing in other people to interview. We did a little bit, but we found that people really just wanted to hear our story. And I almost feel like we appeal to people who just love hearing life stories, which most of us do. Like we appeal to those people who binge podcasts, really. Like people start and then they just can't stop. Because it's very just bingeable. You get going on the storyline and keep going.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Podcast Success Secrets. I'm super personally excited for this because we've known each other for a while now. We've been working together for a long time. Like, how many podcast episodes have you guys done by now, actually?
We're 90 in. So we're getting close to 100.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a celebration.
90 weeks. We've been doing this for 90 weeks.
90 weeks. That's almost 2 years. I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I don't think a lot of people have a podcast or experience or even know where to get advice when it comes to doing a podcast around like marriage, love, divorce, like touchy topics. I don't know if that's how you would explain them. Religious things, homosexuality, like you guys cover a lot. Plus, you do the podcast with your husband and ex-husband, which Steve isn't here right now. No. It's just you two. So I think there's a lot we can talk about that can shed some light on things and help some people if they want to do something similar. I don't know if there's a lot of people like you though, like who have a husband and ex-husband or if they would want to do a podcast. But, I mean, do you feel like that explains your podcast well, those topics, or?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely just dive into, like you said, a lot of touchy topics that people aren't necessarily willing to talk about, or maybe just they don't know how to talk about them. And so we're opening up that conversation for people to kind of see a new way to view their relationships. And yeah, we talk about religion and divorce and co-parenting and coming out of the closet and all of the things. So
yeah, I think a lot of the topics that we talk about, like the social norm is to feel shameful and feel like there's shame in what we've gone through, like a divorce, right? A lot of times people feel like, I don't even want to talk about my divorce. That was a terrible time in my life. And so it's like, no, we want to bust down that barrier of thinking that the social norm is not okay to talk about. And that's what we do.
Do you feel like that is like, because obviously I think shame is a bad emotion to carry, long term, or people aren't aware that they carry it. Yes. And it can kind of seep into other lives. Do you feel like a podcast is good to, like therapy almost? Like, talking to things helps, like in that aspect?
In fact, every single one of our recordings that we do together with Jessica's ex-husband, who I'm really good friends with now, like that is a therapy session for us. Like that is our therapy session to talk through not only what we're going through, what we've gone through, and you basically get to listen in on our therapy sessions every single week.
So. And pull like, and you pull out all the lessons from it that people can apply to or see in their life. Like, what would you say, like, is the reason you guys started this podcast? Like, what sparked it? I don't know if it was you, Jessica.
So initially, Matt and Steve had talked about doing something together on social media.
We thought about putting together an Instagram account, just him and I, of having the Instagram account together to kind of showcase to the world, like, hey, this is how an ex-husband and a current husband could basically work together and have fun together with both of our daughters, and who, their daughter is now my stepchild. And so, yeah.
And then I decided to run with it and do a podcast and share our stories. And Steve ultimately came on because he felt like if he had a podcast like ours when we were going through our marriage and our divorce and stuff, it really would have helped him. And so that was kind of our idea, is that we wanted to help people realize they're not alone. Whether they're going through the exact same thing we are or not, doesn't really matter. It's just that shared experience of going through something hard.
Yeah. How would you, because you guys definitely have like a different format or dynamic that's different from most podcasts, which makes it awesome. And I think that's why people love listening. Like, how do you guys approach it, with the situation you have? Like, how do you approach the episodes, the content? Like, what are you thinking about? Or like, yeah.
So right now we're mainly trying to follow a timeline of the events that have happened in our lives. And we only have, so the timeline is like 1 or 2 words or 3 words that say, hey, this is what we're talking about. And then we jump into it and just talk. And that's the topic that we're talking about. And just, there's a lot of things that come up and discussion that comes up. And that's basically how we do it.
And in the beginning, like we were told by other podcasting people that this wouldn't work, that like this idea we had, it's not going to resonate. And it has, and we're continuing to grow. And it's been interesting because it isn't like anything else. We're not bringing in other people to interview. We did a little bit, but we found that people really just wanted to hear our story. And I almost feel like we appeal to people who just love hearing life stories, which most of us do. Like we appeal to those people who binge podcasts, really. Like people start and then they just can't stop. Because it's very just bingeable. You get going on the storyline and keep going.
Yeah. I mean, even we were skeptical because as you know, like we work mainly with like businesses and entrepreneurs and we're like, like, you know, what is someone who's listening going to buy from you? But, you know, we've learned a lot from working with you guys on the power of like, because podcasting is essentially just communication. Right. And like people have different reasons for listening to things in life, right? Yeah. Why do you think, you know, being in your space, like people listen? Like what are they getting the most out of it? Like listening, is it mainly like entertainment or is it the lessons involved too? Or is it because of their upbringing and background similar to you? Or
I think it has to do with all of those that you touched on. We have such a variety of listeners right now. It's like some totally resonate just because their upbringing was the same as ours, or they were in the same religion as us, or they're in the same situation as Jessica and Steve, or they're in the same situation as me. So there's a lot of different demographics with our podcast that so many people can relate to. And it gives them also the opportunities to hear it or see it from the other person's perspective, right? Of, oh, I never would have thought that is how my ex may have thought about me. Mm-hmm. And so that's the beauty that we've seen, is connecting with our listeners on so many different levels of they're going through this or they're going through that. And, you know, they've experienced something that Jessica has. And
yeah. And I think that like, that's important for like touchy topics, air quotes, to like get perspectives, you know, because it could be like,
you bring up touchy topics. I'm going to bring this up because there was, you know, before we went on board with you and Legacy Podcasts, we went to another agency and they didn't bring us on because we were touching on homosexual topics. And that was something that I wasn't ready for. I thought, what? Like, okay. But they said, no, we're not going to do this because you're talking about homosexual lifestyles, possibly. And they didn't align with that. So anyway.
Yeah, I don't consider that touchy. More so like it could be perceived as controversial to people. Yeah. Or and I was thinking more so, is it gonna be something that you're gonna enjoy sticking with, right? We work with tons of people. We work with people who are talk about the Bible or other aspects of life.
Yeah, you've got them all across the board for sure.
Yeah, I guess it's more of just like how people operate, you know, what they want to, who they want to work with, etc. But and I think that's a good lesson you mentioned about like the perspectives as well. Like that's important, especially when it is topics like this, because that's what kind of can ground the conversation, or you could pull out lessons, or people can walk away with something that they didn't think about before. What would you say you guys have learned, like yourself personally, the most of doing the podcast to get like, what have you gotten out of it? Like, you know, almost at 100 episodes, like how are you different from like 1 to 100? Like what's changed?
Here's the thing. Probably the biggest thing that I've taken away from doing this podcast is I'm super comfortable now hearing my own voice. And I am very comfortable stating the fact that I will go back and re-listen to our episodes over and over again. Why? Because I too am also learning from what we're talking about. And so there's always a different perspective. Life keeps going. And I find myself, what did we talk about in this one episode? And then I'll go back and listen to it and be like, okay, that's what I needed to learn. And so this is something.
Yeah, because sometimes, like, I mean, after a while, you learn how to just go with the flow. You just kind of like going with it. And I guess reintegrating, or like, you know, I'll listen to my stuff and I'm like, oh, that was actually good in the moment. I just was talking, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How about you, Jessica?
I feel like I've learned a lot of just going for it. Like, just keep going forward. I mean, as you know, Daxie, I had no idea what I was doing. We had no idea what we were doing. And it was a rocky start, and there have been mess ups along the way, but we kept going. And that's the thing that I think is really, drawn people to us, is we're showing up. We keep showing up, even though it's not perfect. And that's real. And that's what people want, is they want something that's real.
Yep.
And we're offering that in more ways than one. So
yeah, the less that we edit and the less that we try to orchestrate an actual like produced episode, we've noticed the more like it resonates. It resonates with people.
Mm-hmm.
So
what would you say is the most surprising thing, like, you've from someone listening to the podcast, they've told you, or like feedback, or like anything that you didn't expect would happen from you like doing this, or like was a surprise to you?
So one of the biggest surprises for me, because right when he said that, it came directly to my mind, is I didn't realize that there were going to be people out there who on the verge of suicide would be reaching out to us and asking us for support and counsel. Like, that was a big shocker to me. And I wasn't really ready for that, but I'm in it. I gotta, not that I'm going to counsel them. That's for the professionals. I'm not for the professionals. But what I can do is I can be their friend and I can listen. And that's probably been the biggest surprise for me personally.
For me, it's been, I'm trying to think what it's been. I think just the opportunity it's given me to connect with so many people on a different level that, we're hoping to touch a few lives, but now we've been able to touch, tons of lives, thousands of lives, and be able to help people along the way. And like Matt's saying, just even helping people feel seen and heard and understood. And that has been such a great thing for us to be able to do and feel like we're contributing.
Okay. Second biggest surprise. Ready for it?
Yeah.
So we used to be pretty social with our friends, but now we basically don't have any friends because they just listen to our podcast and they think,
okay.
Matt's parents do this too.
Yeah, my parents do it. They're like, oh, we were just listening to you.
What are you doing here? Why'd you come over?
Why are you here?
Yeah, it's kind of like, like that concept of like in business, like they say, like you want a business that works while you sleep. That's how you make money.
Yeah.
Like, I guess having a message that, affects people while you sleep or not thinking is like powerful, right? Like it totally disseminates. And rather than having a conversation individually with everyone, you can just speak to everyone the same.
Yeah. And so all of our friends who listen, they already think that they know everything that's going on in our lives. And so nobody reaches out anymore. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. That's always an interesting feeling too. Like and I don't know if you've experienced someone you don't know knows a lot about you. And
you're like, oh yeah.
Well, it's interesting because Jessica just went down to Phoenix last week and she visited one of her good friends and reconnected with her through the podcast.
Yeah.
Because she started listening and I've never met her, but she made the comment of, I already know Matt. I feel like I know him, but I haven't even met him. So.
Yeah. What, so like, I would categorize like the whole, like if you had to put your podcast in a bubble, it's probably around like self-help, like figuring out how people can discover about themselves, through your stories, et cetera. Like what tips would you give to people who, they're doing podcasts like in a similar vein where, they're trying to help other people and maybe sharing their stories, et cetera. So
one thing I have to keep reminding myself, because I mean, it's a huge bubble, right? Like there are a lot of people doing something similar to what we're doing. And off of this, like I'm the only one out of the three of us that's really creating a business off of it, right?
Excuse me.
You and Steve work together in a different business. But so I'm the one that's like doing all of the other stuff and creating a business off of it. So remember that your voice is unique. Like you have a special voice to give to people. So even though it seems like, yes, there's a whole bunch of other people doing the same thing, you're doing it in a different way. And there are people that are going to connect to you individually. So keep going. Like there are people that need to hear you and are going to resonate with you. And that's something I have to remind myself of fairly often of, hey, I might be doing something similar, but it's not exactly the same. And it is something similar. That means it's working. Like this is somewhere there's always business to go around. There's always people that are going to hear your podcast and that you're going to resonate with. So keep going, even when it feels like maybe you're one voice amongst many. People need to hear you.
Yeah. How has it impacted what because I think when you first started, I don't know if you had like a business online or if you were like selling anything, like has it helped you kind of discover more like who you're serving and how you could help them? Like just talking through things, getting feedback?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely guided where I'm going and what I can do. I mean, I had an idea of what I would like to do, and then it's just helped me narrow in what my audience is and who I can connect with and who's wanting to find what I have to offer. So it's definitely helped that.
Gotcha. I have some fun questions I want to ask, and this is just more personal.
Yeah.
Just because, I've listened to a lot of your episodes, and I know you guys like to be fun as well. Like I'm sure that how would you say the overall like mood or theme of the content has changed? Because initially it was probably like, you're going all the way in the past and it's heavy loaded, like now is it more like, what would you say is the current like theme or mood?
So in the very beginning, like I was super excited to start from the very beginning of Jessica and Steve's story because I was the one being able to ask the questions. Because I truly wanted to know what their different dynamics in their relationship consisted of. And so now that the kind of the tables have turned a little bit right now where we're at on the podcast is
we're talking about you.
We're talking about more about me. And so like the excitement now is like, oh, wait a second. Now I know how they felt a little bit. But I do find Steve now is more excited to ask me the questions. So overall, we're excited to find out more about each other's lives. The mood during and I look over because here's our recording area. The mood is, okay, what are we talking about? And let's dive into this so that we can find out more about each other and truly what we think about, life.
Yeah. And what stories are going to impact other people and help them feel seen? Like, what is it that we think people need to hear out of this story so we can connect with them? And we've definitely, I think it's interesting because we do have like a very, like what we're talking about, deep topics or hard topics. We also have fun together. Like we just enjoy each other and hope that people see that you can have these hard conversations and still have a good time together and still laugh about it and find the joy within the situation.
Yeah. One of the number one comments that we get consistently is, I love listening to your podcast because we can tell that you guys are having fun together. And that's it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show the world that even though Jessica is divorced, I'm divorced, and we can still have this good relationship with her ex. And I wish that resonated too with my ex, but
yeah.
Whole another story.
And I've actually noticed that with a lot of like popular communities, whether they're doing live streams or something that's more like, more than one person, it's the community element where they feel like they're a part of it or like they're a friend, like they can be there in the room with you.
They think they're sitting on the couch right there, just
hanging out with us,
hanging out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I your approach is definitely, I think, something more people could do, where it's more like, how you started. Obviously, it's evolved differently, but like, moderating a conversation around difficult topics, and just that dynamic, people can get a lot out of, like hearing that out and seeing that play out, and just letting what happens. What are your spirit animals? I think I know, like, what Matt. I feel like, yes.
Okay.
What do you think Matt's spirit animal is? What's your spirit animal?
Okay. I'm curious to hear what Daxi says, and I'll tell you what everybody else tells me.
I think it has to be something around like a teddy bear or
really?
some sort of just like a friendly bear, not like a mean bear.
Okay.
Like just a.
I think I agree with that, Daxi. I think you nailed that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
What did you think?
Well, that's definitely on that. I don't know, in the aspect of like the podcast and what we talk about there. That's probably, I'm pretty close to that, like Winnie the Pooh kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I've also been told like I'm a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah, I agree there too. Yeah. Yeah, but in business, it's probably different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes people just don't know how to read Matt. Like until you get his sense of humor and
my sarcasm,
it takes a bit. So I could see that.
Yeah, I don't show much emotion, and I'm very sarcastic. And when I am sarcastic and show no emotion, people don't know if I'm serious or I'm just joking.
Yeah, I can see how that's a problem.
Yeah. It can be a problem. It can be. I don't know what my spirit animal is.
Your spirit animal is a chinchilla.
A chinchilla?
Yeah, either that or a flying squirrel.
I could go for the flying squirrel one.
Yeah, I feel like you're something that flies. Like probably a pigeon or something. Yeah.
I thought about flamingo.
No.
But they don't fly.
No.
It's just because they're bright.
Yeah. What so like
flying squirrel.
But they like shrimp, and that's why they're bright. So you're not a shrimp eater.
So like how do you see like the podcast like evolving and like changing? Obviously, like you said, it's already kind of changed a little bit the dynamic, but like where do you see it going from here, and like what opportunities do you see, with the podcast, what you've done so far?
So in my mind, I see the podcast continuing to because every single week is a new week, and we can always discuss, there's always topics that we can discuss each week. And so I truly believe that we're never going to run out of content to be able to share on our podcast. Now, it may be a little bit more difficult to have several weeks worth of content ready to go.
Yeah, because you're more documenting versus yeah.
And so I think we can
Well, and we've made a couple changes recently, and the guys didn't really have much say in this.
No, she did it herself.
But like
can I hear what they are?
Well, so just every few weeks, like we're throwing in just a solo episode of me, because I am the one like providing programs and support to people. And so for now, that has been resonating with people. In fact, I've gotten really good feedback about some of those. So we are and the guys are really busy. Like Matt owns his own business, and Steve is now working for Matt. And so then it just takes off a little pressure from them as well. So we're making it work for us is really what I guess I'm saying, and still trying to cater to our audience.
But that doesn't mean I'm not going to have my own solo episodes occasionally.
I would love it.
I would love that.
I would love to hear Matt just go off for 45 minutes.
What do you have any topics that come to mind, or anything you want to rant on? Anything you want to rant? Yeah, anything you want to rant on?
I do have a lot of topics. Yeah.
Like what?
Mostly has to do with, yeah.
You don't want to spoil it?
No, I don't want to spoil it. So here's the thing. Any relationship, like the topics of relationships can pertain to so many different areas of life, right? And so as an owner of a business, we're constantly making decisions, and we're constantly having the conversations, and sometimes they're really hard conversations. Like I kind of have the saying that goes like, any news is bad news. No news is good news in my niche, right?
Yeah.
If somebody, because it's a service-based industry right now.
So it's usually like a problem, you mean, or like it's something you gotta fix.
So the only time I will hear from somebody is if there's a problem. But if everything is functioning properly, there's no news. They won't bring anything up, and so which kind of makes it lonely, right? It's like but what I'm getting at is there's relationships. The concept and talking about all kinds of different relationships pertains to so many aspects of our lives, whether it be work, family, self relationship. Like it all has a symbiotic relationship. So
yeah, I would think humans are the biggest integration that we have with anything that we interface with.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's going to be talking about business relationships.
Yeah. So I'm excited for the solo episode personally. I'm sure I could learn a lot.
We'll give you a heads up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we could wrap up here in a minute. I think you guys shared a lot of awesome information. And I've learned a lot about you guys through this, actually, more than I knew before. And
what's your spirit animal, Daxie?
What's my spirit animal? Yeah. I think it's a black panther, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of they have good vision, or I think it's a jaguar or panther. They could see through night.
Yeah.
You've got the vision.
They've got the vision. Yeah. Sweet. But yeah, I appreciate your time. And if people want to go listen to your podcast, obviously they can go to The Husband-in-Law. Anywhere else you want to direct people where they can follow you, etc.?
No, just yeah.
We're on the podcast. We're on Instagram.
Yeah. iTunes. Whatever.
Yeah. And I didn't mention this as well, but what you're saying too, Jessica, like how you're, providing people with additional help, like that's also like another cool thing about a podcast is like once someone knows, likes, and trusts you, you can, easily provide the next step or provide help. Right. And people are way more willing when they like feel like they know you a lot,
For sure.
It's an easy yes. I'm sure you've experienced. So,
yep.
Cool. So everyone go listen to the podcast Husband-in-Law. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. Go all the way to the beginning.
Yeah, start episode 1.
If you want the juicy stuff.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for Daxie to come out with his chronological podcast.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's actually like a good like format. I think if people made one around just like their life and it was like chapters.
Oh, totally.
People like it.
And that's the thing. Cause like Daxie, I really want to get to know you as an individual. Like, if Daxie did a chronological formatted podcast of Daxie's life, like it's
there's a lot to unpack there. Some of it might be more of a open wound than a scar, So,
but here's the whole thing that because some of the things that we're talking about, they were open wounds, right? And for us to heal those open wounds, we had to talk about it. We had to get in there and discuss it and figure out why it was infected and clean it out and talk about it so that we can now open up. And once we talked about it, now we can relate to other people who are also going through it. And now there's an instant connection of, okay.
I've learned that recently from a friend talking about how like having, memories or experiences that are like charged negatively, like a good way to neutralize them is by looking at them, but looking at all the pros and cons and like balancing it out in your mind so it doesn't trigger you when you ever, because a lot of it's subconscious too. Like if something's happened to you subconsciously, that'll affect you without you even knowing or how you navigate life. So yeah, I feel like this is a cool conversation. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk soon.